Thank you so much. And we want to convene our workshop today. Our agenda, as I mentioned to you yesterday in an email, we're going to focus on the comment we made 3 weeks ago in the select board about.
Can I ask a question here?
Of course.
That doesn't say we're on YouTube right now.
That's because we're using the in-room system here. I set it up on YouTube, so it's not going through Zoom. You have to go to the town website, to the town channel. Okay?
All right. As I said, about 3 weeks ago when we were going through the appointments of officers and blah, 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 we were to approve the rules of order, and we tabled it to have a discussion on any comments on the rules of order. So that would be, I would recommend the first order on our agenda. And then we discussed also looking at, as part of that, some things belong in rules of order, some things belong in policy procedure discussion, and we can have that second. I mean, ideally, I'd like to probably schedule this for no more than an hour and a half at most. I'm hoping that if there are any items we want to develop, something on like a policy that we agree on our procedure, that we can not spend the time here writing it. We can draft something and get it out to each of us and have a comment so we can move forward with it. Given that, unless you have any comments, let's start with looking at the rules of order as written. And I don't care who wants to start. I have a few comments, but I want to defer to you all about any changes we want to make or clarifications to the rules of order as published from, well, it says June 18th, 2019, but I'm not sure if it was even updated then. Any comments from anybody on rules of order? Mark?
First off, I think we would have a hard time finding the Washington Street conference room. It doesn't exist anymore. So
Got that one, Mark? I got that one.
correct the name of the conference room?
Yep, got it.
Walking, wandering up and down Washington Street, looking for the room.
Right. Right. And besides that obvious, I call it typo, are there any other comments or additions you would like to talk about on the rules of order?
I know we talked about how agendas are transmitted to the local media. I don't know that it needs to be super specific in this document particularly, but I just wonder if it should be more broad. A draft agenda will be transmitted to local newspapers. If we're just saying like to media outlets, I just wonder if there's a broader way to word that.
Maybe are you suggesting perhaps it says will be transmitted to the media in advance of the meeting? That kind of wording is what you?
Yeah, exactly. I know that that's sort of a bigger conversation how we do that, but I wonder if it makes sense for it just to be open here while we're figuring out if we want to change that in the future.
Yeah, I think especially, Allison.
Yeah, I think that's like a big part of the stuff that I would get more specific with, just in terms of like, what is, when we say newspapers, what do we mean? When we say local media, what do we mean? Like the email lists for the town, like for people that want to subscribe to updates from the town, I think that's something that really happens at the local website, that people can sign up for all the types of updates that they would want to receive. So, because I think it's been semi-insufficient.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you.
The Camden Herald, Little Alert, even as far as like just in general, like public hearings and planning board notices and notices when people, just to have something that people can sign up for that would guarantee that they'll get this kind of stuff rather than having to check the website.
Procedural question to Audra. If we are sending an agenda on prior to the meeting and we do a revision, aren't we also required to send that revision to the press or not? This says not.
We do.
We do, but this says any revisions will be immediately posted to the website. Should it say and sent to the media, sent whatever you say about the media, to local newspapers.
Distributed to local media, and I would change newspapers to media, local media. Because that cover, newspapers is an outdated term.
All right, I'm adding those.
We probably need to actually say what we mean by, what we consider to be kind of a minimum distribution in terms of, you know, what is the paper of record for Canada? And what is that? Do we mean the Sunday Pilot? Do we mean Camden Herald? Do we, it's been kind of just left up in the past to whatever we're able to get in, and it's not always the same.
Yeah, well, would it be,
But he's done anything wrong, but
I would think we don't need to list particular people in this rule, but we should make sure that the distribution list that gets sent out, it covers all the local media. That's what we should check on a regular basis and
yeah,
make sure that's all.
yeah. Now, I was just going to say that, Mark. I think
But specifically on the rules.
we could say to the local media list, and we have to just maintain a list in the town office that, and we could always change and update on the sides. We don't want to list it here, otherwise we're going to be changing the rules of order every time there's a new media thing we want to contact. So we,
I kind of feel the same way, but I wonder if an easier way to do that is, you know, that in this document it says that a media distribution list or a distribution list shall be maintained and kept accurate, you know, something like that. Because I do think that the reality is that year to year, you know, an outlet might go away or a new outlet might come in and change. I just wonder if that's an easier way to do it.
Well, what we can do is say the media list is kept current, and it's on the town website. Please check to make sure the conduct, you know, the conduct.
So if,
So we can.
as a member of the business, I could talk a little bit to this real quick.
Yeah.
We call, so every newspaper I've ever worked for, which is the local one, and some in Augusta, we call around like in an election cycle or something, and we double check that we are on the media list, that the particular outlet, here's how to reach us. I think we could put a call out to media, out to anyone who would like to receive. We could put a press release out and ask them to contact us. It's really, I mean, we have our sources of record for the town that we are obligated to publish in, or the state. But anyone else who would like to be receiving this information, that really is something that media is often they don't expect us to guess.
so
Is it pretty standard these days that like press releases are emailed to people? That's how it
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So what if we added another sentence that says a local media distribution list will be kept current and listed on the website?
That sounds good to
I
me.
think that's very smart.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
how are we gonna do this? Are we going to hand information to the, I don't know, is it easier just to send in or? I don't know with the setup, can you see hands or not?
Yes,
I'm having a hard time hearing Alice, only Alice.
same.
Me too. I don't know if it's my phone or.
No,
Can you,
Allison, you're a little electronically distorted. Yes.
Very well put, Mark. You're a good politician.
right,
Next one. I've never been called that, but anyhow,
okay, how about now?
it's good. It's good.
We're good.
I'm using a different computer. Okay, so, well, I see there are two issues here. One, it's all well and good just to, when we want to send press releases and just get the word out, and you just do the blast and you send it to all the media outlets that are interested. But the other part of this is the state laws that we're required to follow, and there are times when our public notices are really designed to just be able to cross off that box. And so filling that minimum requirement of publishing, every so often we're like, well, we can't get that public hearing in before the vote because we can't get it out 7 days before this or that. And so usually we have looked to the Camden Herald print schedule for that and been somewhat of a hostage to it, I think, at times. And some of that's all well and good because it slows things down a whole lot so that the public can keep up with the idea. But I'm not sure that it makes sense anymore because it sometimes comes up as a reason why we can't do things because we can't meet this print deadline for the Camden Herald. And so us talking about whether like the bank, when we're just trying to meet that requirement of publishing in a newspaper, whether it would be sufficient to choose like one of the daily newspapers in order to comply with that.
Like the BDM?
Like the BDM, exactly. Then we would of course do the thing where we send out the blast to all of the media outlets that want to be on our list, but just for that print requirement, I think personally, I think that it would be okay just to go with just the BDN sometimes in cases where we need to get something back. I don't think most people are relying on print media anyway.
True.
I'd say,
Money by printing in the Bangor Daily News and then online everywhere else when we need to meet that requirement.
Right.
that if we could name a daily paper of record as the one that we do all of our public hearing and, statutory announcements in, that would make it much easier on Janice and I.
Should we post that on the website? This is our primary requirement to be BDN, and then also these are done as a courtesy to.
You can put this all in this document.
Fine, whatever you think. I'm okay with that. I think that's
Janice had,
And Mark has hand. Janice, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the state paper actually is the KJ.
yes.
Oh, is it? I thought
Yes.
the BDM
So
was
Jay,
for
so
record.
maybe
Yeah.
not.
The state does all of their public hearing notices in the KJ.
So Taylor,
I didn't see it in there.
Taylor's had his hand up for an hour.
The problem with the KJ is it doesn't really have
Wait a
root
minute,
either.
Taylor,
Yeah.
Like you can't buy it.
Taylor.
locally.
Taylor, go ahead.
I think this is a great idea, but to me, it seems like, Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying like, we name a daily newspaper of record that simply satisfies our statutory requirement, knowing that most people may not read the Bangor Daily or the KJ. At the same time, we're also sending for a distribution list. I think in reality, Susan and Linda likely are going to post something online within the day anyway, which is the one that people actually read. But we're at least satisfying the statutory requirement in a daily newspaper, so we have more flexibility in terms of scheduling hearings.
Janice?
I do have another question. When you were talking about putting the distribution list publicly on the website, there are several people on that distribution list that's why I send a blind copy, because they don't want their emails public. But,
Right, yeah.
when you said keep the distribution list publicly on the website, and everybody's email address is going to be on there. Some people
But
are
we can allow them, we can allow them to be off of the, give them the possibility of being on the public list or off the public list. I don't think that's a problem. I just want to make one note, Audrey and Bob, if you're using the town microphones, you need to be closer to them, otherwise you're a big echoey voice.
Actually, the town microphones have no effect on Mark's experience. We have one microphone underneath the computer, which is the singular microphone that is feeding audio to all participants on Zoom. This is confusing.
How come your voice sounds strange?
I'm far away and I'm yelling.
Okay, I didn't quite understand what you said, Juniper.
Juniper said, you're not going to hear what we're saying through these microphones.
Okay,
You hear through a microphone that's up at the front of the room that you can't see.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
It's kind of a temporary setup, testing the model and how
Okay.
it works. And yeah, good point, Mark. But back to the distribution.
Well,
What-
either way, it is hard to hear sometimes.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Mark, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Bill.
So just back to Allison's point, it's a little different than the rules of order of business, but regarding notices for hearings and whatnot that statutorily are driven, or perhaps some of our ordinances require notices, it has to be by statute a paper of general circulation in the area. So Jenna's point that if the newspaper is not readily available at Boynton's, French and Braun, Hannaford, it would not satisfy the statutes to put notices in a paper that you can't find in those places all the time.
So it's the BDN.
Yeah. So I think we should stick with the BDN, and that's our primary source, and
Yep.
and that can be written in here, that's fine. But the list of others we're doing, I think we should put that on the website and just list them and allow anybody that wants a copy to get a copy, whether it be Penn Bay Pilot or Camden Herald, or whatever. Allison?
Right.
So, we may want to, I think that we are likely, if we were to make the decision to just go with the BDN for all of those notices, I think we should at least be aware that there would probably be some resistance as we would be cutting off a revenue stream for a local newspaper.
Yeah.
And that could very easily be seen as highly insensitive.
Yep.
So it may be that we want to think about this a little bit, but also double up in some cases, so that, I mean, the Camden Herald makes a lot of sense for certain things. So, I mean, there's the free press too. So why are we choosing the larger elephant might be, why have we been going with the Camden Herald rather than the free press? If what our goal is really, in those times where we do have enough time to get it out, if we really want as many people to see it as possible, then the free press is a better choice. It might be worth it to ask a couple of these entities what their circulation is in the area. But I guess mainly with this, I was hoping to have a way, not necessarily of eliminating the use of the Camden Herald, but of not having that tie our hands at times when it's important that we move forward. So it might need to be a little bit more nuanced than just the BDN for all of the things that we actually pay for and some of the free stuff for everybody else. But I don't know, Jenna's, I could.
Okay. Mark?
I think we can legally, we can cover our legal requirements with BDN, but it would be short-sighted to not also include, I would include the three local free press, Village Soup, and Penn Bay Pilot as well. It costs us a little bit more money perhaps for those notices, but in terms of making the public aware, because a lot of people nobody uses, there's no one that reads all four, but a lot of people read one, a lot of people read another. In order to cover it and do the best job of keeping the public aware of what's going on, I think we should just bite the bullet and cover all four.
And again,
I will tell you,
Even though we legally don't have to do it, I think it's proper to do it.
right.
This is, okay, I just have to say it. I feel like there is a lot of vagueness around all of this, and I think that you're kind of setting us up to fail right now, there's going to be some expectation that we are just going to know when it's appropriate to advertise in which paper. So, if everybody has very strong feelings about this, I want it to be very specific and written down as to when we do what.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we're there, I'm not saying, right now it's exactly what we said about law or not. I'm saying, we're not probably, as Bob said, we're not gonna get it written perfectly today. But we should really view these things as two separate. The goal of getting the word out to as many people as possible is not achieved in the same way as the necessity of meeting our statutory requirements.
Right.
Those used to be very well blended together. That is not, they're not anymore, so.
Right.
we should put them-
We have two issues that are separate. One is select board agenda, which is discussion of rules of order. Two is the other things for public hearings and blah, blah, blah. I think we should just redraft this from what we've heard. We don't have to close on it and make sure then we can bring it back for this. And then we should also just do a separate specific procedure on notices to the whatever for the other.
Local media.
Yeah. I agree we have to get it written. Just don't want to have to redraft it here in this workshop. I'm hearing clearly that and I agree with you, we need to be specific. So Janice and you and everybody doesn't have to guess about which item goes where and when.
Yep.
Deal?
That's
Right.
my only point.
The, well, the other one I wanted to mention, sorry, somebody say something? This item about agenda items and necessary backup information submitted to the town manager's office no later than noon on Wednesday. Frankly, that's too late, because we're trying to, I suggest we continue to establish, we've been trying to establish agenda development Wednesday of the week before, basically a week before the meeting for the following Tuesday. The reason is every time there's stuff that needs to be meted out, vetted, and we make some revisions over Wednesday, sometimes Thursday morning. If you push this into Wednesday, so at Wednesday end of day, we're getting all the input for the following week's agenda, it's too late, in my opinion. There should be, I would suggest that, that all agenda items and, yes, and by the way, keyword necessary, why it needs to be on the agenda is very important to come from anybody to put it on the agenda by Tuesday, by the end of, well, noon on Tuesday before the select board meeting the following week. Otherwise.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, otherwise, and by the way, I know there's going to be emergencies. It happens every time, and that's where the revisions will occur. We try to minimize those, but I think it should be noon on Tuesday prior to the next select board meeting.
Which one is that, Bob?
It's F.
F.
Let's see. I'm just looking over this. Anybody just please raise your hand, jump in if you want to discuss any other item on here. I think those are all the ones that I saw were. Mark?
You just make one note to Audra, in item D, when you change this, the sentence, any revisions to the agenda will be immediately posted to the website, and I would put sent to local media, because we can't guarantee that they're gonna post it. Just to make it.
Which item?
D.
D. Yeah, I agree. I think I had annotated that we would, any agenda changes would go the same route of distribution as does the first draft agenda. I agree.
Allison has a question.
Allison?
So how many people actually use Sonic? Preferably in Windows Word format.
I'm losing Allison.
Here.
What?
Is anybody else having a hard time hearing Allison?
Okay,
Me too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Allison.
so the part where it says that, all of the things submitted should be preferably submitted in Windows Word format.
Yeah.
I think it's vague and could potentially lead to problems because, we have that issue where, files get stopped.
Yep.
And so people are trying overly hard to comply with that. I don't know, I just had a bunch of people get frustrated that they sent things to the town and it hasn't worked out. So,
Which item is that in?
I mean,
You could do preferred format as R
Dennis probably has
and have a copy.
Well, just take that sentence out.
Well, I don't think if a person wants to submit an email requesting,
Just submitted an email, it doesn't have to say what format. Just
Yeah, I agree. Now, which item was that? I saw that, but I can't find it now.
It's in the top paragraph, agenda items. Email to the town manager, assistant, Jansky, and then just, that's it.
Oh, that's the packet procedures.
That's the packet procedure.
Packet procedures.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'd take out the format.
Hold on, Janice, are you the assistant manager?
What's that?
Are you the assistant town manager now or not the town manager?
Yeah, that's an old, yeah, that hasn't been updated for a while, that's all.
Well, let's fix that too.
Okay.
Yes, change that. Okay.
That
Okay.
means that you're automatically in charge, right, if she goes away?
That's what they told me, yeah.
To the
That's the first thing I asked her.
right, to the packet procedure, there's a sentence here that's the third paragraph. It says the select board members, town attorney, town manager, an additional copy, but that's not even in English. What is it trying to say? The sentence is the first sentence is fragmented. The select board members, town attorney, recording secretary, period. I just don't know what it's trying.
Where are you?
It's the third paragraph, two sentences.
Yeah.
It says select board members, town attorney, and town manager, recording secretary, period.
Yep.
An additional copy shall be made available to the town hall for public review. I don't know what to, we strike it if we don't know what it is. Okay, anything else?
One other thing to mention, I heard this week that on item E, access channel 1303 has gone back to the channel in the 20s, and I don't have Spectrum anymore, so I can't confirm that, but I was told that's the case by somebody that does.
And maybe we should just refer to the published cable channel and not use this as a reference.
That's a good idea.
All right, on item E, published cable
I'm
channel.
looking at it on 1303 right now. So.
Can you check to see if it's in the 20s?
It's on 1303. I'm
That's
looking at it right now.
That's what,
Yeah, can you check to see if it's in
Oh,
the
it's in the 22.
22?
That's what it used to be.
Yeah.
anyhow, published cable,
Up there?
cable channel, and,
Interesting, okay.
all right. But that's a good idea. We shouldn't, if
When you
we,
put in 22, it goes right to 1303.
right. So this shouldn't be the document that defines or how this should be on our website.
Yeah, we do that on the agenda too.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. Anything else in the rules of order? All right. Let's move on to a discussion about any recommendations for things we should look at for improving or defining better, whatever you want to call it, how our policies and how our procedures move along. I had made some notes on a few, for example, I've had the opportunity over the last couple of years especially to communicate with every one of you about, comments about, I think we should look at this, I think we should look at, or I think we should focus on this or that. And I think this is a good time to talk about, for example, structure of our agendas and what should be the focus of the agenda. Everything from content to durations, because I've had those discussions with you. If the board doesn't want to discuss it, fine, let's go on to something else. But I think that's one of the things I've heard a lot of discussion about in the past. The meetings are too long, and by the way, that's probably my fault, but that's neither here nor there. But how much should we revise our procedure on select board meetings? Audra had recommended to me once that we should have one meeting that focuses on lots of action items and get them done. And the second meeting of the month would be only absolutely necessary action items, but dedicate most of that meeting to discussing, for example, priorities that we've set in our next workshop for the year, and statusing those. That's the kind of discussion that I've heard from you all, and that was one item that I put on my list. then I have a couple others about specific policy discussions, but I want to hear, anything from the rest of the select board, if this is the tack we want to be.
I would speak to this a little bit.
Please.
I know that this is going to be unpopular with some people. I really sat on my hands and thought about this. I do hear that people are confused by our meetings, that they're lengthy and that we get off topic a lot, that we don't stick with the agenda. I can say that when I was a reporter, I used to be able to predict what time an item would come up that I was going to need to cover for the paper because the meetings ran so efficiently to the agenda. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, that occasionally you get off topic, but I think that oftentimes it is town staff, and I don't, again, this is really uncomfortable for me, but that I got a lot of complaints about some things that were said that weren't on the agenda the last meeting that we had by a town staff member. Just people were sort of totally like sandbagged. And I think it's important that we try to tighten some stuff up.
Okay.
I think it's important for the public. I think as a select board member, people know that I've had some health stuff. Maybe that's informing it, but I really am we've been doing a lot better, but when we go until 10:30 or 11, I've never seen campus select board meetings go like that. And just a lot of the time, I feel like we'll spend 45 or 50 minutes on something that does deserve discussion, but really seems to get so far afield, and then everyone is jumping in that possibly could. And sometimes the board isn't even allowed to have our time to discuss things without interjection. And I think that perhaps, making a goal of some kind of time. I mean, I know this has been unpopular, and I'm just putting it out there based on both personal feelings and feedback that I've received, especially recently with some, when we're doing select board reports and stuff, suddenly there are 2 or 3 staff members that are giving 15 or 20-minute dissertations on projects that people didn't expect that are of great public interest. And I think that's so.
Okay. Thanks, Jenna. Other comments, select board members? Audra, can you let me back in?
Sorry, Bob.
I know I blipped out.
All right.
Allison.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I have I think that trying I basically think that this will always be a work in progress, and that there are no rules that we can really establish with time limits or, only action items on these days and discussion topics on these days. I think we can continue to improve, but if we try to, things always come up, and 2 weeks, even just 2 weeks is a fair amount of time. And so it would be hard, I think, to restrict action items to every other agenda. I personally hear that our agendas, when somebody looks at our agenda, they can't always, even people that are looking at the agendas on a regular basis, it's hard to tell based on the agenda items what the town priorities are. It's hard to get, we're just running down that, it's hard to get a sense for people of what is the select board working on, what do they think matters. Theoretically, what we think matters is what we place on agendas, but that's not always the case because a lot of it happens with town staff doing work, and then little updates that end up happening on the side. I'm always more keen than others, I'm sure, on sort of putting everything on the agenda so that people can see, they get that sort of alert of these are the things the town is working on, rather than just burying all these things in, town manager's reports or select board reports, and you have to listen to every word at every meeting to figure out what the town is doing. I think it's nice, the idea of putting some things on the agenda all the time that are sort of like updates on these priorities. That we hopefully would agree on at the next, some beginning meeting where we establish priorities and then check in on those priorities every so often, and whether then we decide, okay, maybe it's the town staff person that's giving an update or maybe not. I do agree with Jenna. I personally like having more staff in the meetings a lot of the time, because I think it helps them to know some of the things that we're working on and sort of create some better team building vibe. But I also see that it sometimes gets,
Okay,
sometimes it is what Jenna says it is.
All right. All right.
So anyway, that's just I would be hesitant to establish too many rules about like hard cutoffs, but I think Bob, you've done a pretty good job of sort of
not so sure.
weighing.
Well, it's the thing is about, I really want to hear from the other select board members, because we have discussed this about, a business meeting versus more of a utilizing twice a month when we have an opportunity. We hope we have an opportunity to speak to the public, to Allison's point. This is the twice a month when we hoped. We haven't had the audience. I don't know why. That's what it is. But that's the perfect discussion point. But Mark, you had your hand up.
Here's how I feel about it. We meet only twice a month on a regular basis to do the business of the town. And I don't think we should restrict people speaking. I'm very concerned sometimes when we cut off the public, because this is our chance to run the business of the town. And whatever needs to be said should be said. If we're only meeting twice a month, there's a lot of business to be conducted. And if sometimes I have to stay later, I'll stay later if the business needs to be done and it needs to be talked out. People need to hear what we think. We're not allowed to speak off camera to each other. We can speak individually. We can't have joint meetings. This is the only time the five of us can get together and speak thoroughly about what we're working on.
All right.
And I think we should restrict it. Because I don't think there's a reason to restrict it because we think the meetings are too long or, somebody's speaking too long. We need to hear about what people think about what we're doing. Otherwise, we're restricting ourselves, we're restricting the public, and I don't think that's proper.
Okay, well, Taylor, you're next.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me too, because I think that both viewpoints of making sure that everyone has an opportunity to get information out there and are talking about the important things is important. But at the same time, I also think that, the reality is once you get like hour 3 of a meeting, people's bandwidth and attention span and the amount of seriousness you actually give any topic goes downhill rapidly, in my view. So, I think I totally agree with Jen's point about if something substantive is coming up in a meeting that wasn't on the agenda, and perhaps by accident, because it may be new information that came in the last few days. For me, not being in the town office every day with staff members, it's helpful as an avenue, a public avenue to get information from staff members. But I think if there is something that a staff member knows is going to come up or has a report they're going to give, I think maybe a way to consider doing that is, like Audra regularly gives reports. That an example could be if an auditor's report or any staff member's report says, town manager's report, and then perhaps the highlights or the topics that she's going to discuss or that a staff member can discuss is simply bullet pointed very simply in there, so that if somebody knows that a particular item is going to be reported on, even though it's not an action item, that it will come up. Some version of that. I do think that people being surprised by information that they may be deeply attached to is probably not fair. So, I don't know if there's a great answer to this or a simple answer.
There isn't.
But I do think that, we need to, I agree with Allison that we can't just say that meetings are going to end abruptly after 2.5 hour from now, what's happening next if we're setting it off, that's just never gonna work. But I think that it is continually a work in progress. This is the first, not the first, this is one of the many discussions we've had about this topic.
Right. Well, no,
And I think we need to, be consistent as much as possible about trying to be diligent about making sure that we're being concise and, our own reports are as relevant as possible. And, I'm as guilty as anybody else about rambling too much, maybe doing it now. But I think that there's, it's just a matter of keeping control of ourselves. But I do think that if there's stuff that's going to be talked about in a select board meeting that we know ahead of time, we should probably have it on the agenda, or probably should be discussed if it's something discussed.
right, right. And I'm not suggesting that we set a limit. That's humanly impossible in any arena where you have what we have to do. There could be a night when we have, I always remember the famous, I think Allison was there when I wasn't on the select board, and I called the famous cold toe tacos night about the snowball, and it was like, this room was packed solid with people. And I walked in because I was supposed to give a presentation on Route 1, and I said, why are these people all interested in Route 1? Talk about naive. But that meeting went on for an hour and a half with just that. So to your point, Mark, we're not trying to cut anything off. What we're really talking about here is it is possible to kind of understand that in general terms, this done well or on average, this could take 2.5 hours. It may take 3.5. Don't think we're going to be able to limit. I just think the bandwidth of people is about 2.5 hours, especially us. Well, that's why in this week's agenda, there is a specific item on it to discuss a long list, maybe too long, of our former, we have to reestablishment planning priorities. Now, perhaps what we could do as a start is to head down that road where we stick to our agenda of business items, whichever the action list is and those kinds of things, and we get into a discussion in the meetings of select planning priorities. So, for example, if I have something to add about energy and sustainability, I will tell Audra that, and we'll put that. If Allison has something on substantive on, say, river restoration, or Mark, you guys on EMS, we'll put that on so that the public sees that we're going to be discussing the status of those initiatives in the town. I fear that if which we did this time, we have every single one of the planning priorities on that list. If we spend 10 minutes on each one or so, we're going to be an hour just doing that. So this, again, it all says it's kind of a learn on the fly, but I certainly don't support, cutting something off at a certain time. We don't know what's going to happen, especially as we get back to, hopefully someday, to public input, whenever that happens. Other comments? Taylor, go ahead.
I like that idea, and it puts a little more work on us, Audra and staff included, to be a little bit more prepared ahead of the meeting, knowing we're going to want to discuss certain topics. Because inevitably stuff comes up that we think of in a moment that might be related to something we're talking about, and we want to discuss it. And it's difficult to say, we really shouldn't go off the path even though it's maybe connected.
Right.
I do like the idea of, something on there. It could be 1 word, 2 words.
Yeah.
A topic that we know is going to be discussed, just so people know that something's coming up. And to Allison's point about, people understanding what are the priorities of the town that are being worked on, I think that touched on that as well.
Right.
Because those are items that may not be action items, but they're,
right,
constantly being worked on. And
right.
something to talk about.
Well, I think a little bit of my problem, and to an extent Allison's also, when we're trying to put together the agenda, I would like to have some input from the select board members on what item of discussion on planning priorities you believe there's an update, good timing to tell the public where the status of it is. In the past, I think I saw, we were using select board reports to do that, but select board reports doesn't say what the reports are going to be. And that's why I think we should go to more the list of the planning priorities. Allison.
Okay, if this is one thing I really like, our select board reports and the fact that it gives us a little bit of flexibility, and I would be really sad to have that taken away, because.
I'm not proposing to take it away.
And I mean, it's already been pushed to the end, which, you know, to me, that is, it's a lot of work being on the select board, as everybody knows. And we can't always publish a report ahead of time of what we're gonna be talking about in select board reports. And there's a little bit of, you know, people elect us and they get a chance to get rid of us every so often. And we get like very little time that we can just actually talk amongst ourselves. And so I don't look into what's going on in the Opera House at all on my own, but I love, mostly I love Mark's like ring off about the Opera House things, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna do that, but every so often it strikes a chord, and then I can ask, that's a time too, to say, oh, hold on, you were in that, like design committee meeting, can you follow up on this just a little bit? Otherwise, the only other way to do that is like, I guess I'll send Mark a text message, and I think the public does benefit some from, and I know I benefit from it, from us having a little bit of back and forth. Not every disagreement that we have needs to be offline and settled ahead of time. So
No, agreed.
I would not want to take
Agreed.
away all of the flexibility we have.
No, I don't think anybody, I haven't heard, and I certainly don't support taking away reports from Audra or the select board or whomever else. Where you put it, yeah, you could debate that, but no, this is more of a discussion about the content of the agenda in terms of discussion items. That's what we're talking about. I just think that and by the way, I'm not looking for any written report, I just would be looking for, I think next week, I really have some stuff I want to talk about EMS. That's it. That's all you need to do. And we put it on the agenda as a discussion item under priorities and have a discussion by whomever is talking to EMS. That doesn't have to be in the packet. Mark?
I have to say, I disagree with a bunch of things here. Number one, I think the select report should be always where they were. They should be at the beginning so that we have the audience to hear the individual things we have. I don't think they should be stuck at the end of the meeting. I was very surprised and not happy about that. And also, I think we're trying to fix something that's not broken. I think there may be an agenda here that some people are unhappy that it takes longer, that we have to talk more in depth, but I think it's important. I don't think that anything's broken here, and I think this is a conversation that it doesn't need necessarily to happen.
Can I say that I want to say this absolutely needs to happen, because I'm always put in the middle of complaints from different select board members about how, what is going on with this. So I think that this conversation does need to happen. I have no dog in the fight as to how you do it. I'm fine with select board reports being at the beginning, being at the end, being as long as you want them, being as short as you want them. But this conversation absolutely needs to happen.
I agree.
Well, I side on the thing, I don't think it's broken. There are times when I think certain conversations go too long and we all get tired and stuff. But I think 4 hours every 2 weeks to talk about the business of the town is not too much. And if you're not prepared to offer that, then don't do the job. I want my thoughts to be, I'm elected by the public to put my thoughts forward about how I feel about the town, so they know what I feel and what I'm doing, and they know whether or not to re-elect me.
Okay, all right.
I don't want to be cut off, I don't want to be
Okay.
restricted in what I say.
Okay, I want to hear Jenna and Taylor speak to this also.
I don't disagree with Mark, but I do think that historically, as a person who grew up in this community and has lived here, that our select board meetings have been much more efficient. It has nothing to do with cutting off the public. I'm a reporter. I want the public to know things. I also think that being derogatory about those of us who want meetings to run more efficiently is a little bit much. And that's what I have to say about it. I'm a little steamed right now, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah, okay. Taylor?
Yeah, I'll say again, like it's a fine line. There's always going to be runoff. I agree. I also enjoy the select board meetings because Allison is 100% right. There are times when it's like, time is short for everybody, and it is an opportunity to hear about things that might be valuable updates, just to know sort of what's going on. And we all work on different things that we have interest in, and it's nice to hear that every once in a while. Perhaps there's just a little bit more of a concise way to do that. I don't know. I've been happy with the way that they're run. I don't think that anybody really goes more than 5 minutes or so with select board.
Right. Right.
Sometimes we don't have reports at all. But I agree with Janet that like we should do our best to keep the meetings efficient. Like I don't think that certainly we can all muscle through a 4-hour meeting, but I don't think it benefits anybody because like I'm just being honest. Like we hit hour 3 of any meeting for participants or people that are just watching. You lose concentration and focus, and I'm sure that there is some statistic about psychology somewhere that's going to say that like nothing efficient happens after a certain time point. I'm not suggesting that they come up with a hard and fast rule for that, but I think just in terms of having a discussion about it, I think that we can acknowledge that we're just doing our best to try to keep meetings efficient and as timely as possible is a reasonable thing for us to be thinking about or and constantly discussing.
Well, one consistency I'm hearing is that, if we had our druthers, we prefer this meeting to be 2 hours or so, whatever, that we can work on. This is not a question about select board reports and whether or not it can be upfront or not. That's minor in my mind. It's a question of whether you have select board reports with just say whatever we want to say versus doing something proactive to put it on the discussion item to say, I want to talk about these points. And show the public that's what we're talking about. Select board reports to the public is a line item. They have no idea what we're talking about. And to Allison's point, I agree. I think it's important for them to know the things we're working on. And those things we're working on should be our planning priorities. To me, that's pretty simple. Why would we be adverse to putting on EMS if it's hot at the moment, or broadband, or river restoration on the agenda as an item under discussion, not in select board reports? And that way allows us, me especially, to plan what and when to try. Again, it's a target to be whatever time it is. It's never going to be exactly that, but that's what this discussion is about. It's not about eliminating anything. It's about how you take your comments, all 4 of you, and put them into a strategy with our agenda. That's what I'm hearing. Allison, you had your hand up?
I think it's still getting now confusing as to what the actual problem is. I see what Audra is talking about 100% because you and I fight a lot in those agenda setting meetings, and it speaks to your character that you still invite me. Even though we don't see eye to eye.
It's all going to the dogs.
No, I mean it's true. We see clearly the board. I'm always saying, I think this rises to the level of an agenda item a lot of the time, and there's a discussion about whether it does or not. I think it's always going to be hard to know what rises to the level of an agenda item. I do not agree with the 2-hour thing necessarily, but I do agree that my ability to make complex calculations and make decisions like that does really decrease, and I'm sure everybody's does. So sometimes it may make sense to put select board reports at the end, even though my heart is very much with what Mark said, and I would like them mostly to be at the beginning. When we have a bunch of budget stuff, it's very hard for me when that gets to the end.
Right. Okay.
But I do think that we need to do this to avoid these agenda setting meetings where it's kind of like Bob is trying to take into consideration all of the feedback he's gotten from all of us, and then weigh that, and then it's turns into this argument about well, I don't really think that Mark actually feels like that, or I don't think Jennifer was saying that, I think she was saying this, or so to avoid us having to spend so much time like, because then we go in and we complain to Audra, you know, somebody might complain to Audra because blah, 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 blah. But then it was like, well, Bob was just trying to take into consideration the feedback that he had gotten recently that the meetings were really going too long. And then it's hard to know who's right sometimes, and I don't, so I think you need to do this.
Okay, okay.
And try to get to the heart of what are the actual problems, what are not really,
All right.
not really problems.
All right, Taylor, then I'll make a summary. Taylor,
Yeah, on the select board reports, I haven't really had any issues with the way the reports have been going. And personally, I've actually felt like recently the meetings have been pretty concise for the most part.
they have, they have.
I think it's something for us to keep, like, we know when we look at an agenda, it's going to be a heavy meeting that's going to run a while.
All right,
So I think it's just up to us to know, like, all right, I want a couple things I want to say at the top. I like keeping the meetings at the beginning, the reports at the beginning of the meetings.
right, right.
But, you know, I think it's just a matter of, you know, in context that, like, I'm not going to talk 15 minutes to talk to you about something else, what other people work on, because I know that I have.
Yeah, this is, I think we've let this morph into a discussion about select board reports. It's not the intent. That's not a problem. The intent, what I'm hearing, what I would love to have happen is for the select board members to send me an email anytime before, you know, Wednesdays of the week before. I would like to, one, have this on the agenda as an action item, and the reason why, I would like to have this on the agenda for discussion, and for the reasons, that's all, no reports, so that it really help me, and I think Allison too, when we sit down and say, look, this is the stack of stuff, but I'm not getting that from select board members, and sometimes forces, when I get into a meeting with Allison and Audra, this came from left field, this came from right field, and then trying to balance those. I get caught off guard sometimes. I'm not trying to limit the meeting length. I'm trying to plan it a little bit, but that's all this is about. So it could be, I think it's a work in progress. I think if we can get you all to agree to send the email to me and copy whomever you want to about requests in that regard, it would be a tremendous help.
One thing I'd like to say is lately the meetings have been fine. I know that Bob has been trying, we've had this discussion many times, he's trying to plan the agendas so that they are not too lengthy, to try and keep a lot of long discussion items off of the table. And the meetings have been, my family's been surprised recently because they've seen me at times they don't expect. The meetings have gone quite well lately, and you know, I think you know, a little discipline in our own selves goes a long way. But I don't think we've, you know, we're talking something that's not as big a problem as maybe it has been in the past. And sometimes, you know, we are a more proactive board than I think previous boards between us.
Okay.
So we're going through more things. We're trying to reach out and do different things that I haven't seen from
Yeah,
previous.
let's not be.
That makes it busier and more complicated.
Yep.
Sometimes that gets into stuff, and I think we're to be commended for that. And then just recognize sometimes it takes a little time. But I think Bob has been really good about, you know, planning the meetings so that they don't go too long. And I think it's not as big a problem as maybe we think.
Okay, thanks. I wouldn't want to belabor this. I think it was a great discussion, but if anybody disagrees, please tell me now. But I would still respectfully request any requests for agenda to send to me /Audra / anybody else you want, so that we know what, not select board reports. That's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about discussing something that's not an action item, but a discussion item. It could be EMS, it could be all the things we've listed. I don't care what it is. That's what I need. That just helps me a lot. Does everybody, well, most of you agree with that statement? Anybody disagree? All right, let's just do that. By the way, I just also believe, I'm not sure, the last meetings have been quite good. And I don't know it's because of the items and it's the summer or it's COVID. Because we need to get to, that's why we're trying the system right now. And it seems like it's a patch, thanks to Juniper and Company, a patchwork thing with our current system here to allow us to get the public re-engaged. But that's the piece we're missing, which adds some time, and that's fine. That's what these meetings are about. I'm not happy with why there's 10 people watching the YouTube video. We don't know how many people are watching cable, but I hope we can keep monitoring it and maybe improve that. That should be our objective. Anyway, onward. Alice?
Really? Hold on. Is that, I mean, our objective is to get more people, if we want to increase viewership of our select board meetings, and I'm not sure that we do, then there's a lot we can do to be funnier, more interesting. People would much rather watch like a little bit of bantering back and forth, some arguments. If that's the way we get more people to watch our meetings, also making more people upset would help too. Like, that's unfortunately in some with this world for these types of meetings. I think the Jim Tassin from the Bicycle Coalition of Maine put it best last week or whatever it was, that silence is golden. And
Yeah.
that's not always true, but it sort of is. I like the meetings to show our personality a little bit more,
All right.
and that gets out of hand sometimes, and I work
All right.
on that aspect of my interrupting, all that kind of stuff, because it is a problem.
All right. Yeah, well,
But I don't think that we should be like focused so much on the viewership of our YouTube channel unless we are truly putting out content that we think is best viewed. Like, that shouldn't be our main method of communicating with the public. And when they asked us that last time, when Susan Mustovich asked us, you know, why is viewership down? And
yeah.
I just thought it was a ridiculous question.
All right.
Because more people come to meetings when they are upset.
Correct.
They stop you at the grocery store and chat with you when they generally feel like they're being listened to and that things are sort of on the right track.
I agree. My comments were not about just making a better meeting so people watching the population. That's what I said, but what I really mean is I like Jenna, have received a lot of comments back saying, and I take it as, you know, my responsibility. Some of the meetings are not worth tuning into. That's why I've had comments like that. I'm sorry, this is the comments I've had. But anyway, we've discussed this enough. We're already an hour and 15 minutes into this. Actually not, because we started late, but we're an hour into this. And there's a few other items I wanted to cover if there's any interest on because I think I've got a clear idea, but again, I'll just leave it with the idea that any comments or recommendations for agenda items will be sent to myself and whomever else. So in the reasons, whether it's an action item, in other words, we want to be something we can voting upon, or it's just a discussion about EMS or whatever it might be. And the select board reports, fine. I don't care where they are. I thought to Allison's point, we can manage, if there's a budget thing, we can move those later so we're still fresh. That can be selected as we go through the process. But to policies, I'm sorry, Taylor, you had one last comment.
No, I was just going to say that, you know, I really appreciate the time Bob and Audra and Allison you guys put into the agenda setting meetings. I know that there's a lot away every couple of weeks. And I have felt, you know, that keeping the vision as we can, and I appreciate the time you guys put in. So
Thank you.
Recognize it. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess thank you for that, but regardless of what Allison says about me tolerating her at meetings, it's actually it's a plus and minus. You have to have balances in life. But what I'm encouraging is the other 3 select board members to stick their oar in the water once in a while with an email saying, Bob, I really want an action on this item. We've had a few of those recently, or I want to discuss this topic and put it on the agenda for discussion. That's all I'm asking. Back to policies or procedures. There's all kinds of things we have a lot of policies written, like, signing, the warrants and all that kind of thing. But I'm just interested in any comments from the board on other policies, procedures, because I've thought about this, and I have a couple of recommendations to look at. We don't need to write them today, or we can nix them today, but that's the purpose of this part of the agenda. Does anybody have a comment they want to bring to the table in that regard? Or not seeing any hands. Jenna, did you light up?
I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut at the moment.
Okay, okay. Well, for example, I mean,
I'm just formulate some thoughts just after the conversation that has been occurring, and I'd like to write them down. I will say that I've suggested a couple of agenda items that never make it to the agenda, and it's good to know that the formal request procedure is to go through you. I can't tell you, I know everyone probably thinks this is ridiculous, but I get a lot of calls about people that are upset that our animal control officer won't do anything about cats, and tells people to just forget it. If they have a stray cat or a hit-by-car cat in their yard, that needs help, and I've asked to have that on the agenda, and there's been a couple of things, and so hopefully, I mean, it's not just Jenna coming up with silly things that people have asked me, citizens have asked me again and again, and I often don't feel, because I'm quiet in meetings doesn't mean that I'm not observing, it doesn't mean that people don't talk to me, it doesn't mean that what I say doesn't count.
no, it's not.
I feel that way a lot.
It's not. It was brought to the table, as you know, it's on this week's agenda. I'm sorry, next week's agenda. But yeah, that's a good point. But in that regard, pop me an email and just say the reason why, and it's going to wind up on an act. When we first started, I first started select board in this chair too. I had posted a document on the shared thing on Microsoft Office saying, if you have any recommendations for agenda item, put it in a document. I got no responses whatsoever, none. So I'm just trying to reinforce that, that's all. And then move on with this agenda today. But Allison,
Thank you, Bob.
Well, I mean, okay, so there, I think some people may have gotten the impression, as I did, that because we're inviting vice chair to the agenda setting meetings, that it was also appropriate to share agenda requests with me. And so then I've certainly felt at times that when I've brought those forward, that it's, I don't know, that something hasn't been right with the process, that it's like if you didn't go, if somebody didn't say it directly to you, that it doesn't, like,
No,
somebody saying it to me was seen as a way of getting around you, but what the intention was in no way like that. It was just not everybody can, it is hard to do all this and to go on the select board share and fill out a document at the right time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, yes, sorry, sometimes I'm just going to pick up the phone and call you and say, I was thinking about this, I don't want to forget. And
Right.
so when Jenna shares something with me that she thinks is important, sometimes I might call Jenna right before our agenda setting meeting and say, hey, I'm about to do this. Is there anything you want me to bring up? Or sometimes it can't just happen. Things are going to happen in a holistic ways and kind of just evolve.
yeah, I get that, but 90% of the time, there's no reason why one of you can't call me. I don't want to walk into a meeting and find out there's 5 or 6 items I need to consider because I've been thinking about the agenda before I came in the meeting. And I think there's nothing wrong if you want to send it to me and to Allison. I said to whomever, that's fine. That can be our procedure. So we know before the meeting what items we need to consider. I think it's courteous. I think you need to step up and do your jobs as board members and not sit back and wait for the thing for us to have to guess at what's a priority. I'm just asking for consideration from the rest of the board, and I heard you're willing to do that. So let's try it and copy Allison on too. That's fine. Or call. Or call. And if he calls, I'm going to put it on a list and bring it into the meeting when we have it on the week before select board. Anyway, moving on to any comments on policy and procedure stuff, because we are running out of time here. There were a number of towns have been doing a number of things to attack certain areas that have become kind of the activity of the present. I did look at other towns to see what they've been doing in terms of select board policies, especially the most recent ones. For example, a silly one, not silly, but it comes to my mind because I'll explain. One is they have developed a policy for how conflicts of interest are adjudicated by the select board. It's very simple. It's basically, I'm Bob, Route 1 North project comes up. I'm a property owner. I need to bring to the board just acknowledging that some people may see I have a conflict of interest and present it to the board, and then the board can decide whether they think that, yes, that's true, and if it's true, then Bob needs to recuse himself from discussion and involvement in that item. It's become a very because of the litigious society, no offense, Counselor, but that we're in, it seems to me we do run into those. So that was one that I had thought about. But that was what it was driving to in this piece of the agenda. Other ones that are out there today become very commonplace is what is it I saw in, I think it was Bangor and two other towns recently, did a great job, I thought, on developing a very concise but not lengthy guideline for select board for social media cautions and intent. It's just a document that says you did some of the do's and don'ts to be careful because of the litigation, and if you've been to the MMA thing, they talk about that. But again, this is, if we're interested, we could look at developing something or not, it's fine too, but I'm sure you probably had, and I have a few others, but do any of you see any benefit in proceeding with looking at some of these policies toward the future? And I'm you know, those are two of the four that I come up with. How about the select board? Allison, go ahead.
Okay. Are you talking about like rules about what people can say on Facebook?
No, it's rules about, it's little things like they strongly caution that you put on your Facebook page that this is a personal Facebook page. They're trying to avoid litigation for discussions on Facebook that have arisen.
No. This is the kind of, I don't support going down this road at all. It's usually driven by people who aren't that familiar with social media, and
Yep.
it's usually the flow back from it is the social media is a tool to foster discussion, invite public input, and we should focus on doing that better, not in trying to, like, I don't know, protect ourselves from some. We shouldn't be worried about protecting ourselves so much right now. We should be worried about
All right.
doing that
All right.
in a
Good.
better way. But I don't see how
Good feedback. How about the other board members? What do you all think? Have any opinion or not?
What exactly are you talking about? Do you mean like a statement like all views on this page are my own kind of thing? I mean, is that?
It's that's just examples.
Or you have to muzzle.
Well, Bill, are you familiar with these in Bangor and other places or not? And maybe maybe describe, which was a good question that Allison brought up. What is the intent here?
Right. And this is definitely a moving target when you folks have one hat on as a elected official, and then, of course, you have your own personal thoughts and observations, which you are absolutely free to post at any time. The rub is that we have a fundamental premise, which is that the select board must act as a body. And we've just been talking about all the things that you do as a body and how sometimes awkward it is and time consuming to do it. And what I think the trouble has been that other towns have had is that on Facebook, for example, or other social media, the select board's members sort of operating procedure of how they comment on issues that are really select board issues can bleed into what they say personally. And so
when someone tags us in a question about, like this happens, I guess, to me and Allison and maybe some others all the time, but they're like, you know, someone will say, what's going on with the sidewalk on Maple Street? And someone will say, I don't know, Allison McKellar, Jenna Lookner, any idea? And it gets more controversial than that. That's a very mild example. But people look to us, that's for our advice and our opinions on these things. And I get that acting as a board, but that also doesn't mean that I can't say, geez, I voted against this because X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's hard to, I have dealt with social media policies, obviously not for municipalities, but it starts to feel like a real infringement on free speech.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that when a question arises, such as what's going on a particular project, should you be speaking for the entire board? hang on a second,
I don't
Allison.
think
Let me,
I know
let me just get the thought
No one
out.
ever does that.
Well,
I know.
to some people's perceptions, you are. And that's really what I think is the issue that other towns have tried to work around, is are you the spokesperson because a question was raised, which is fine, but in what capacity are you speaking when you make a comment? And there's probably three different capacities. One is total personal observation. Two, as an individual select board member. Three, on behalf of the entire select board. So how do you manage that? Carefully. That's why these other policies have disclaimers that say everything I say here is my own personal opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of the select board. We do that in select board meetings and those sorts of things. So just flipping this for a second, what do you think the questioner, how are they taking the answer that you provide when something is posted? Are they taking it as you personally? Are they taking it you as a select board member? Or are they taking it as you are reporting on behalf of the entire select board? Not easy questions. I'm just laying out the ground of the territory of what is discussed.
Mark first, and then Allison.
I have to say, I've often seen on Jenna's page that she always says, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking on behalf of the select board. She put that disclaimer on. I think Allison has done that as well. They both put that disclaimer on many times. Should it be on everything? Should it be on, but I have seen them do that. Is that enough to satisfy what you're talking about, Bill?
Yeah, but I think that's certainly part of it. But there were I think you're reading this policy as being ominous about restricting free speech. I don't think Bangor approving this was looking to restrict free speech. I think it's a bit of an exaggeration. There are some other points in there about being careful about Bob going onto Allison's page and liking what she posted, and if Jenna does at the same time, it could be alleged meeting of the select board members. That's exaggeration, but anyhow, that's some of the points that are in there. Allison, go ahead.
So the reason that these things are brought up in other towns is always related to some city council or select board members being upset about the way that one or multiple other members of the board are behaving. It all comes from that when they feel like it's not, if we had a select board member who's just constantly on social media answering things, and also it's an issue with town staff sometimes too. They have to be careful too about the way that they respond to things, and once in a while I see something written that is wrong. Some people see things that I write that are wrong, and it's usually a matter of somebody saying, hey, this might be wrong, Allison, or I'll say, hey, actually, did you know that we have been testing Lake Beach for blah, blah, blah. Like even town staff members that have been trained in all this, they're going to get wrong sometimes too. But I don't feel that I can't think of any times where, and it doesn't just happen on Facebook, where you could be accused of speaking for the whole board. We have this problem a tiny bit with committees and liaisons occasionally, and people getting confused about that. And I feel more uncomfortable with committees than I do just sort of speaking for the select board than I do on social media, because with social media, there's this understanding that most of the time it's people that you're answering really general questions about where to go for more information, people that really don't maybe know the structure of the town government and where to go. But I would like, if this came from, so I post a lot on Facebook about different things. If this is a specific concern from a select board member about the way that I'm doing things, then I think a much better way to handle that would be for them to talk to me or talk to Jenna or whoever it was that they consider to be a liability for the town, and say, I was a little concerned about the way you worded this, Allison, because the number one reason why I think I was reelected this time is because people appreciate the increase in information, and it's like it's not just on social media where you have to be careful about not speaking for the whole select board. It's not just a social media thing. I think that our board handles things well, and that, unless the complaint is about me and I'm just oblivious to it all, but just say that and be specific.
No.
not have Bill give us a demo,
Okay.
be scared of.
Taylor, do you have any comment?
I'm not big on social media. Well, I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I do, I do think that social media is definitely a valuable tool for creating discussion. I haven't had any issues with the way that any of us use social media. I think if anything, we're probably going to find that in the future it becomes more commonplace than anything else. So yeah, I don't think a strict policy is going to be helpful for us. I think if anything, it's just going to make it more complicated and
Yeah.
create a problem.
Yeah.
I think that if something happens that we have a real concern over, or if there's a hot button topic happening and it becomes something that feels like an official discussion outside of a properly held meeting, then we should speak about that time. But I don't think that that's happening for us.
Yeah,
now.
okay. This was guidelines, by the way, it's not policy. Policy is a guideline for, by the way, theirs was written for select board and committees, to be cautious about FOA and all that kind of stuff. Because, my personal email is subject to FOA, so is yours. And so is anything on social media. It's a reaction to problems that have occurred, and they haven't occurred here. So I just laid on the table. Audra, did you have any comment about social media, or it's anything you've seen from outside residents, or any complaints or anything like that, or any just, I don't know, they don't like the way we're handling it, or has everything been fine?
I mean, I guess what I've been struggling with lately is I feel like there's a lot of stuff just because of the pandemic and everybody's home more, everybody's using social media more, everybody's a lot more active on it. I think that everybody's reaching out to a lot of you a lot more frequently on it, and it might be, one of the only ways, I guess that, there's less of that sort of incidental interaction that a lot of you would have if you go out in public or, or kind of, living your normal lives.
True.
So I think that if there were some, and I don't want to frame this as a problem, just more of just kind of working through how we do this so that we're being consistent and we're picking up on everything and we're not, I guess, dropping some of the stated priorities of the board and focusing on things that kind of pop up, and losing track of our priorities to focus on, other things that come up. There is a lot more, I think, coming to all of you and then coming to me through social media. And I'd say, and this is not an exaggeration, 80% of my Monday was spent on addressing things that came through social media, and it was kind of like a drop everything and focus on that now. And that's fine if that's what you want me to do, but I guess it's just, when you see things or hear things through social media, I guess just having some system of managing complaints or questions or.
So more like a process, procedure for handling this stuff rather than coming over the transom.
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's just, I've just noticed it really ramping up over the last couple of months.
I agree. It could well be because of this COVID situation.
And it's just been hard
Could
to,
I speak for a quick moment?
Yes.
I totally respect, I hope Audra knows that I totally respect her, and I try to triage when I think some of this might be about an issue I brought up about Black Lives Matter signs being stolen.
and Jenna, I'm not, it's not anyone, it's everyone.
There are
It's,
some
yeah.
people speculating that Public Works has removed them, which obviously I hope is not, very obviously to me is not true. But I think we do, the bottom line is that we do sometimes get relevant information through social media, so I think a system of triage is definitely a good way to put it. but sometimes I find things out about decisions that have been made, at the town level that haven't been select board decisions, through social media, and that doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. I just sometimes there's more information there, honestly, than there is in the newspaper.
Yeah, understood.
And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Just like, I'm a reporter, and
Well,
if there's concern that's just going wild, I definitely don't see poor Audra being saddled with all of it, but I feel like I would probably, I guess I would want to know in that position. But if that's not the case, and there's some better way to relay those concerns, that, are just getting rapidly out of control. And, people do take social media social media seriously, whether we like it or not.
That's clear. I think to Audra's point, I would have to agree if I'm in her position. I'm trying to get what I think of the objectives and priorities of the select board accomplished during the next year or this year. And what I'm hearing is if she's being diluted by these issues, then by the way, the key is, am I being diluted by it? Meaning, is it happening all the time or just once in a while? And I've heard you say it's happening quite often.
Yeah, and Jenna, that's like that example, that's kind of like an easy one to answer, because I can just say to you, oh, no, that's not what,
Right.
No, that didn't happen, and that puts an end to it. It's more of like, I don't want to, and this is awkward because I don't want to say that anyone is wrong about this. I'm just saying, like, it puts me in a position where I have to drop everything else I'm doing and focus on that. And if that's what you want me to do, I'm more than happy to do it. But it's just knowing that that is now the priority. The skate park, this is a good example, and we're going to discuss this at the meeting, but, I think that it's something that you've gotten a lot of feedback on, and it all came through social media. So it's kind of like, drop everything and focus on that. There's been a lot of other ones. That's just the most recent one.
Right.
So, and like I said, it's fine. I don't mind doing that or working on these things. It's just, I guess, recognizing that the consequence of that is that a lot of the other things that you expect me to be working on and you've stated as priorities, those get put on the back burner for me to focus on these immediate things that are coming out. And I don't want to say like I don't want to blame social media for it. I'm just saying it's a very convenient and easy way for that information to come to you immediately and directly and have a lot of people pile on it at once. So yeah, that's my only point. And I'm not trying to complain about it or say that it's a problem, but it's more of just us understanding and having a shared agreement of what's a priority.
Being redirected on a regular basis.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Allison.
So, one of the things that we get coached on a lot is this, like, if in doubt, kick it out. If in doubt, run it by the town manager. Do not go to the specific town employee that you feel is, like, the relevant one. Go through the town manager, go through the town manager. And I, too, worry that sometimes when I just call Audra about something, it sometimes turns into a longer conversation than what I think either of us were intending.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, it feels like she's enjoying it, like she's not saying she needs to get off the phone. So I don't know how to respond to that. But sometimes the things that come up, just because something was brought to our attention on social media, doesn't make it less valid. A Camden resident who's so frustrated about something that they're sharing something on social media and it's perceived as something that is about to blow up and an item of real community concern, to me, the only way to respond to that, if once in a while I think, I'm sorry that car got towed, but I'm prepared to sort of like defend that right now. I don't want to call up and be like, there's a really upset person about this. I'll just kind of do my best. But with the skate park, for instance, that would be an example of something I would have expected to have found out about from a different camp. This would have, and it's always going to be a judgment call sometimes for Audra, what issues should be brought to the select board and what should. And it's never going to be perfect. and we're never gonna 100% agree on like what's a meaningful thing and what's not. But once in a while, things do bubble up, and it'll either bubble up after the fact, where you have a mob of people in the public comment section or a bunch. It's going to be something we're going to have to deal with a lot of the time. The skate park is an example of something that would be a devastating thing to try to defend after the fact, when that thing gets moved out of town and it has never even come to the select board. So sometimes when we make a decision not to bring something to the select board, it's going to bubble up to us in different ways, and we're going to waste a lot of time talking about both sides. So
Right. Right. That's good points, and I think yeah, we want to be proactive, not reactive, but some of you discussed a number of times with me about does it rise? How do we know when it rises to that occasion? You're getting a sampling of a. I'm not anti-social media. I'm not good at it. I don't use it, but I do in my role as select board member get comments all the time from people, phone calls and emails and stuff like that. I don't, just because they come through, 3 or 4 or 5 people, I don't bring it to Audra for action, because I'm sometimes not sure it's a priority for the town. I don't know if it'll blow up into something.
Nobody calls Audra and says, Audra, this is your number one priority now that we're dealing with. I have never once said, stop everything you're doing, because I deem this to be your number one priority.
Okay.
I run things by her, and in this specific case, on Friday, I said, I wanted to see if it was okay with you, if it was going to be a problem, if I reached out to a couple of people and learned more about this.
Yep.
So to me, it's just not calling Audra is like, it's then her job to decide how she wants to handle that information. Does she stop doing what she's doing? Or does she say, yep, real quick, blah, 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 here are my thoughts, I need to get right back to what I'm doing. Or sometimes she might actually agree with us and say, I didn't have any specific action item for her at that time, but it's for me to say, do I need to have more information here? And it's to alert her to something that I'm seeing, and then she can choose to do with it what she will. A lot of the time, I don't know if it's something that's going to blow up either.
And
she gets to choose how to react to the information that we're giving her. And I think most of us are trying to follow that, like, if in doubt, kick it out. If in doubt, run it by the town manager. So we're just going to run everything by the town manager, and she gets to, it's not probably the greatest part of her job, but filter what actually demands action and what doesn't, because sometimes I really don't know the answer. I just want to know what I know.
I think it's okay. Like this particular example, I think it was a good thing. Like, I think that, we're going to sort of come to a good place with it. But I guess it's just, I think if everybody else is okay with the way that it's working, then I'm okay with the way that it's working.
Well, I think the issue is, if I'm sitting here, issue is, how do I know which one of these things to jump on, not to jump on? How do I know?
How do you know with an email? How do you know when she gets emails from Noy residents about their big concern? It happens. That's part of the job. Is just it's not different when we've learned about something on social media. Sometimes we might read a letter to the editor and be like, oh gosh, better change course, and it's just, she's actually really good at that.
Yeah, she is. This is not about the source of the item.
No, and I'm not trying to do this as criticism for everyone. I just want you all to be aware it's ramped up. If you're okay with how it's going, then I'm okay with how it's going.
Well, I'm not okay if it's taking 80% of your time to attack one issue that became.
Well, it's not one, I'm saying that was, I just picked that out because I think that it had a good, it was, like Allison said, it was a perfectly valid thing for all of you to bring up. I think that we've got a good path forward with it.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, that was one of probably 5.
Is there anything we can do better to help you in this regard as individuals of the board?
I'd like to say, this is a society and a situation now where there's not enough time for anybody to do the jobs that they need to do. We're always juggling and doing stuff. I think Audra does an amazing job of juggling the emergencies with the day-to-day things and trying to keep it in balance. And I wish there was a better way to to deal with situations like this, there are going to be circumstances. I think everybody's handling it pretty well. I think Audra does a really good job of balancing. She's always, I found that she's always listens and works on whatever situation, any of us bring up when we do, and in juggling everything else that she has to do. I can't imagine any better solution than having her dealing with this stuff. But things are going to happen. Life happens. There's another term they use for life, but I don't want to use that one on this call. But it happens, and I think we do the best we can, and that's all we can do in this very complex and particularly right now very difficult situation.
Audra, in summary, what I'm hearing is that as things come across the transit, it's your decision. Your decision only as to how to proceed with it, and we shouldn't, after the fact, be throwing rocks at it.
Well, and I just want to say that I think everybody is very respectful about it. I think that
Okay.
you all try to make sure that, the things that you're bringing to me are things that, like Allison said, they're bubbling up and you have concerns over. So I'm not trying to criticize. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with
No,
moving forward with it.
Just want to have the discussion. That's what we're doing. Having discussion. It's a workshop. It's not deciding anything. That's fine. And like I said, it is through these items to foster this discussion. It's good to have discussion. And it is just, we operate as 5. We don't operate as 1 or 2. And if things are going to come across the transom, and you have to make a strong management decision. In the end of the day, if we don't like a 99 out of 100 management decisions you make, we can fire you. And that's the end of it.
Yep.
Then I just want that to be. I know that's simplistic. She's doing a great job, and frankly, she's done a great job handling. And keyword handling each of us. We have 5 different personalities, plus all of her staff she has to deal with. You've done a great job, and I think the select board is doing a great job.
It's just,
It's
just a
perception.
check-in. It's a check-in at a point in time because we're all talking about it now.
That's exactly right. So, good. Are there any other select board members that have anything regarding policy or procedures they see needs reinforcement or establishment? Like I mentioned, the thing about conflict of interest, relatively minor, but nice thing to have. So we're all clear on how to proceed. Does anybody else have anything like that? Well, you're.
I'm a little worked up from the social media conversation that felt a little bit like an attack that was not, things that have not been talked about. So.
Can I be, I want to be frank because I don't want any of you to think that I'm targeting any of you on the board specifically. There's other stuff going on with members of committees and other boards within town that are causing issues that have nothing to do with the select board. So I just want to be very clear that this is not select board specific. There's other stuff going on that's taking up time and effort and energy that has nothing to do with stuff that any of you bring to me.
Right.
So I just want to be crystal clear about that.
And I also believe we need to reinforce, we can't be concerned, we shouldn't be thinking this is targeted at any one person, you, Allison, or Taylor, or myself, or anybody. It's just having a discussion about it because this is a topic of the moment. I had recommended the idea of looking at the guideline. Select board says no, end of it, end of it. Are you going to be sued tomorrow? No, I doubt it seriously, but that's the only reason. It's discussion, and we need to keep it at that plateau. It's not an attack on Audra or Audra attacking us or any one of the select board members. If you're reading it that way, that's a mistake.
Well, I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable with pretty much everything that the board brings to me and what you post and all that. Like I said, there's other stuff going on that I'm less comfortable with that is having an impact.
Can we help with any of that?
Potentially, yes, yeah.
At an appropriate time, will you bring it up to us, in either individually or as a board?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the objective. That's just the objective. Make sure we're communicating both ways and listening both sides, the select board member and town manager et cetera. That's fine. I think it was a good discussion to have. But don't put things,
I know, I just don't want to, I don't want to call anybody out,
right.
because it's not productive either.
No, it's not. And
Yeah.
I think bringing up any specific item like BLM or the skate park, you get into a rat hole, and that's not what this is about. But Allison, you had your hand up.
Because I worry about the image of the town in terms of like not wanting public input and that, and also being really out of touch, which are things that have been issues in the past intentionally or unintentionally, that the normal way that people are asked to provide input on town issues does not work for people. It is a broken system that benefits those who are already heavily involved and who have a complex knowledge of the way town government works and the amount of time or resources to navigate it. So most people don't find out about opportunities for input because it's too complicated. And so to me, it's a great success that we are having more people weighing in on town issues, just like a little bit. And that's happening during this time because we forced it to everybody to have to participate on that like virtual platform
Right.
a little bit.
Right.
Whereas we used to just exclusively cater to the people that can come down and make their point during dinner time, you know, in the Washington Street conference room.
Right.
And it's,
Right.
I think it's uncomfortable to some of the people who have gotten to control things for so long. It's uncomfortable that all of a sudden there are all these new voices who also live in Camden and whose opinion also matters. And, you know, we're not quite used to doing that as
Right.
a town,
Right.
in meetings or otherwise, but
Yep.
I appreciate that this, like Audra has been that, like, I think we've done really quite well,
No, cool.
with this. And I just don't want to become a town that talks about things like this, the threat of social media and all of those conversations that get stirred up on social media. It's that we get such valuable input.
Yeah, and nobody's trying to cut that off, Allison. I want everybody to understand that. It was just a question of whether we wanted to discuss the possibility of a guideline. Clearly, no, fine, drop it. And then I think Audra brought up a good point about her job, and I think you, and I'm saying this in front of the select board on purpose, that you need to make decisions on where you put your priorities day to day, and that that's your job. Do it. We shouldn't be individually coming back at you and say, why didn't you follow up on this thing? It's your decision. We can't micromanage. We shouldn't
We
micromanage.
reserve the right to criticize. I'm not going to be told that we can't sometimes criticize about something we don't like. I mean, what you ask all the time why something didn't get followed up on or that didn't get followed up on, or
Sure.
we don't lose, just by being on the select board, we don't lose our ability to have opinions about the way things are going. If I go on Facebook and say, geez, our town manager is just awful because I've been bugging her every 2 days about this or that, and she doesn't listen to me and blah, 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 that would be really inappropriate because it would lack a lot of the context that, like, well, the rest of the board doesn't really agree with Allison, maybe she should try that. So, I don't know. It makes me nervous. It feels like there's something going on when you start saying, everybody needs to agree that we're not going to criticize August decisions ever.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want, we've discussed this long enough. That was not at all the intent. If that's what you heard, and the rest, that's not what was my intent. But, you know, I think we're stretching this beyond a rational discussion, not rational, but a productive discussion at this point. And we should.
I want to ask a question that has absolutely nothing to do with this meeting. Audra, I saw the state release new funds for the COVID stuff. Did we receive any of those?
Yep, 23,000.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it because I think all good points. I don't disagree with anything you've said, any one of you. We just had a discussion. That's a good thing. It's productive in my opinion. But one last thing, do we want to set a planning priorities meeting here now? Which would be the one we're going to combine with this, but I knew it would go too long. We need to do that as soon as possible. Does anybody have any recommendations for setting a date for that? I'm thinking probably
2 weeks from today, perhaps, the 26th?
Let's hold on a second.
Pulling up the calendar.
I believe the only thing, I think, well, that evening, Allison, we have a Midcoast Solid Waste meeting, but that's all I have on that day.
I mean, for recently, meetings to go longer, so we don't have as many of them.
So we-
Okay, yeah, the 26th, at what time are we suggesting?
Well, why
Same
not?
time, 10
Well,
o'clock.
what is I agree with Allison. We had too many meetings in one day, we get brainwashed. What about Thursday, the 27th?
The 26th, 27th don't work for me.
All right,
Following the 28th, 2nd, or 3rd.
I'll be out of town that week. What about the Tuesday, the 25th?
I think probably Tuesday the 25th, I just think double check a couple of things, but I would definitely pencil that in. Or the 28th does not work for me. That's the one day that week that I absolutely can't.
how about the 25th at 10
We
a.m.?
do the 26th in the afternoon.
Oh, no. Is that Midtown Solid Waste?
Yeah, that's the same day, that's the same day as Midcoast Solid
I'll be
Waste.
so grumpy by the time.
How about the 25th at 10, Tuesday?
25th at 10 works for me.
Allison?
And that should work for me too.
So,
Taylor, can you do the 25th?
Can you check, Jenna?
Yeah, it's not great, but I'll make it work.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it works for me. Yeah. I do have work obligations and things that I have to sometimes plug in when a client needs me, but yes, I'll put the 25th on my calendar.
All right. Allison, does it work for you?
yeah, sorry.
Okay, so we're penciling in Tuesday, August 25th at 10 a.m.
Taylor, would be better if it were an hour later, is it?
Yeah, this
No,
time,
I'm not going to be in town, but I'll make it work.
all right.
Okay.
All right, that'll be it. And unless there's anything else, we're going to adjourn the workshop. And thank you for the candid conversation. It's always productive. And take us off YouTube and we'll close out our workshop.